Welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with Coach Red, where we bring you all the news, stories, takes, and opinions about your favorite teams from the Pacific North, fresh from the good to the bad to the Mariners.
The sweet, sweet Seahawks, baby.
Yeah.
Mixing it up.
We
Here
sure
we go.
are.
Wow, we're
Yeah.
getting wild here. But before we go into anything else, we got some streaks going on. Seahawks are on a winning streak with their fourth consecutive win, and we are on a winning streak as this will be our 200th episode. We are at the double centennial mark. So we brought in a special guest. So why don't I just jump right in and tell you a little bit about us? If you're looking for a guy who's been on every single episode of Kicking It with Coach Red, multiple different co hosts, and even one solo. And if you're looking for that, maybe my name's in there. It's me, your boy, Coach Red. You can find me on X at the real Coach Red, on Instagram at the real underscore Coach Red, TikTok at the real Coach Red. Also find the show over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, and leave a comment or two. And it's been a while, but what do they say? Distance makes the heart grow fonder. And we knew that you were in for a treat in this 200th episode. We had to bring back in Scott the Thought, aka Scottage Cheese, aka as what his mom calls him, son, and you just might know him as Scott.
Or whatever. I've been called other things. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me and congrats on the 200th show. That's excellent. And Kane, I know you've been on a majority of them, so kudos to you. And you guys need to keep it going. But I want to talk Hawks.
Well, before we do that, we still have to introduce the last person.
Oh yeah.
You gave a little spoiler alert, but it shouldn't be a spoiler to most. Uh, he's been on for over 100 episodes. He's been the second most attended here and has really stepped his game up over the course of his time on the pod. Give it
Right.
up for Kane.
That's right. I paid attention this year. Yes, I'm Kane. You can find me over Twitter, Kane2406. TikTok, Kane0624. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. Follows. Do it, freaking do it.
So the Seahawks game, we'll get into our regular breakdown. Started off a little rocky, but oh boy, did it change the tides real quick. Break it down by quarter. First quarter, Seahawks score 17 whole points. Arizona scores 7. Second quarter, Seahawks clock in with 7. Arizona gets 3. In the third quarter, Seahawks put 3 points on the board. Arizona combats that with 8. And in the final quarter, the Seahawks score another 3, blank the Cardinals, and that's an ending score of 30-18. And we'll jump into this later, but what I think is one of probably the most complete game of the year in all aspects. But let's break down the scoring. First quarter, Kyler Murray throws a bomb to Michael Wilson, 41-yard TD. Ryland with the PAT. Jason Myers, the offense drives down, puts in the scoring position, and Myers clocks in with the 20-yard field goal. After a pick, JSN on the next play gets a 19-yard touchdown pass from Geno Smith. Still in the first quarter, we haven't even moved to the second. Zach Charbonnet, 1-yard touchdown run. Second quarter, the Cardinals get back on the board with another 6 put in by Chad Ryland from 28 yards. Then Charbonnet says, nah, man, we need to extend this lead. 51-yard touchdown run.
Wow.
Get out in the third quarter. The Seahawks start the scoring off with a 36-yard field goal by Jason Myers. That is combated with the 2-yard touchdown run or 2-yard touchdown pass, technically, to James Conner from Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray converts on a rush for the 2-point conversion. And then in the fourth quarter, Jason Myers finishes his thing off with a 35-yard field goal. What a game.
Yeah, I mean, it was just everything we asked for and more.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't think there's any reason to be disappointed with that game at all. I mean, yeah, that was a whole solid effort on everybody there. Um, One of the things I'll say, I read some of the Arizona press, and they're, the Cardinals should have won, and this and that. It's like, in what universe?
What game were they watching?
I mean, uh, Coach, you and I have touched on it before, and I don't think you quite like what I'm going to say, but I think Arizona is soft. And I also think part of their problem is Kyler Murray. And my
Could be.
reason my
Could
reason
be.
for Kyler Murray is he's a sulker. He likes to sulk when things don't go his way. When he threw those two back-to-back picks, he was sulking. Um, that is a poison to the team. I mean, look at the Jets with Rodgers. When they got beat by the Hawks, his response was, "Well, there's 11 people on the field." You know, that's not leadership. And it reminded me, and I'm going to go back in time, and you guys may not remember this because I'm
Pulling out the time capsule.
old
Scott
enough
taking
to
it.
old enough to be your daddy. So, anyways, I was thinking Kyler Murray, and I was thinking of sulky quarterbacks over the eons. And one name that came to mind was Jeff George.
I know who Jeff George is.
No clue.
Okay, well, he played for Atlanta. He played for a lot of teams, but he played for Atlanta and took them to the playoffs in 1995, which was the first time they'd been there since 91. They go to the playoffs, they get beat, but he's a talented quarterback. Next year, he starts jaw-jacking with his coach, June Jones. They get in a screamer on national TV on the sidelines, and he gets benched for the rest of the season. Not because he's not talented. I mean, Kyler Murray, by far, has got to be the most talented midget in all professional sports. He's got to be, but he's got a
Fair.
real sour attitude.
You're not wrong. With Kyler, there's just a lot of factors that have gone into his play over the last couple of years. The big thing with Call of Duty, there was
The big
actually
thing with Call of Duty.
there was actually something that dropped this week, so
I,
he was
I
probably
think
looking forward to be with that.
I do think that Scott's point of him being a little soft does not get helped by the Call of Duty
Hey,
argument.
hey, he'd rather game than be on the football field. I respect it, right? But you know, Kyler just is more about me, and the same thing. I think you can kind of say just that whole team.
I think that
Yeah.
it's a little bit tougher. I do think that Kyler's demeanor is not great, but you look even at Gino when things go a little awry, he's sitting
Yes.
there, like every quarterback, it's kind of ingrained in them. I don't want to say their team as a whole is soft though, because when you look at that team as a whole, I think that they're above schedule on where they anticipated being at. You've got a second year head coach that I don't think had as much fanfare when he got the job, even though you had Philly that had a very good defense when they went to the Super Bowl. I think that he's still kind of learning his ways a little bit. And I think that the one twist you could put why Mike McDonald's a little bit ahead of that is having Leslie Frazier on his staff. This is a guy that's been at multiple stops. He's been a successful head coach in the league. And when you look at this team as a whole in the Cardinals, the leaders of this team are James Conner, Kyler Murray, and Buda Baker. Buda Baker, stud, Murray
Absolutely.
above average, and Connor also above average. But usually the rest of the guys on this team, outside of Trey McBride's been doing some better things this year. Marvin Harrison has the upside, but those are both young guys that are still
I,
finding their way. So I think that they need a little bit more leadership as we go. But
Yeah,
hey,
the ventureship.
I'll tell you what's soft though. Can I? I'm going to push back a little bit, Coach, and you can come after me, and that's fine. But that last offensive drive at the end of the game by the Cardinals, they were down 12 points. They had no timeouts. It was 2 minutes left. Chances are they weren't going to win, but they didn't even try. They wanted to pad their stats. What? Why? What's the point? You should
They weren't
always
rushing
try to.
up to the line. I get that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
well, they were passing right down the middle. They were running up the gut with no timeouts. And the
That was,
Seahawks, you want 20 yards? Fine. I don't care.
you
Yeah.
know, this is also coming off a week where they lost in the final seconds to Minnesota the week prior.
I mean,
You
they're a
know,
losing streak now, and guess who started that losing streak? The
that's right. The
Seahawks.
Hawks. Let's jump into that first quarter real quick.
Let's not jump into that first quarter. Let's jump into some stats
Sure.
because the people you want to highlight in that first quarter, we're going to go over in here. I promise. I got all the
Okay.
stats. I know that you started out as Statosaurus Rex because you just want to throw in batting averages and
That's
OPS
true.
plus slugging
That's true.
divided by the coefficient of three, but we digress. Let's go into the passing stats. Geno Smith, 24 for 30,
Great game by him.
233 yards and a tutty.
He did
Very efficient.
exactly what he needed to do in this game. He is 6-0 against the Cardinals now. You couldn't really ask him to do much more. He was hitting his passes and just some people. Hey, he had two dimes that didn't get caught, and that's unfortunate.
Well, and he put the ball in good places and stopped the presses. No sacks taken in this game.
Yeah, no, no.
Zero.
Offensive line played insane this game.
Yep.
Speaking of the offensive line going insane, there was someone else that went a little insane with Kenneth Walker being out. Zach Charbonnet goes into the lead back role and has 22 carries for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. Next closest guy was Kenny McIntosh, 7 carries for 38 yards. Looked very effective on those carries.
Oh
Good
yeah.
for him.
Geno Smith had a rush for no yards, basically got back up to the line, so very close to a sack. And then, but I count that as a passing play. And JSN clocks in with 1 rush for 4 yards. So if you exclude the run by Geno, which was a drop back, if we just call that a nothing play, 30 passes, 30 runs, 50-50 offense.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing, dude. Zach Charbonnet, what not to say this week? He was hitting the holes powerful. He was hitting dudes,
He's
shedding
elusive
tackles.
a little bit too.
The everything was just upside for him this week. And Kenny McIntosh, dude, was a nice little fresh squeeze in there. I loved what I saw from him.
I think he earned some carries when K9's back.
Yeah,
I
I
think he
said
did.
that today. I said that today that he looked amazing for what he did, right? The legs kept churning at every single step. You didn't see him kind of fall over as you see sometimes what happens to the backs. Both of them were just power through everything, and the running attack was amazing. Offensive line played their nuts off and gave them all.
Great. We got a bunch of nutless linemen now.
Sure, dude.
Well,
But
eunuchs get really large. If you ever read about the harems in the Middle
Sure.
East, they snip them and they just start blowing up. We
but
learned
we've
that
been
on Looney Tunes too. At least I did.
we've been calling for the running attack to be better, and it
To be
sure
competent.
it impressed me this week.
What is up with K9? They're being real hush hush about it. Is he more
Yeah.
hurt than we realize?
Uh he has been dealing with a calf injury, an ankle injury. He was coming off the oblique earlier in the year. I think there might be a little bit of knee thrown in there too. I think that he's just a little bit banged up and decided he couldn't go. And I mean, I'm not ready. No one on the show is going to anoint Zach Charbonnet as a starter because we know that K9 is the superior talent in the running back room. But this harkens back to us earlier in the year when K9 was popping off, and same thing with Charbonnet when he was filling in before the running game fell off. This is a good combo to have. And it was good to finally see Kenny McIntosh get some run before fourth quarter garbage snaps like he got earlier in the season because Charbonnet was absolutely working his tail off. He also, when we get to it, got involved in the pass catching game quite a bit as well. So
Yep.
this guy had a lot of mileage on those legs in this game, and it was good to see them go to Kenny McIntosh and to see him be effective as well.
I also wouldn't have been mad if they would have threw George Kalani in there.
He got a couple of
Yeah, he
looks
did.
in
He
the
did.
game. He caught one pass for -1 yards.
Right.
Yeah.
But I just like his running style as well. It was just great. It was great.
I mean, Charbonnet too. I didn't know he could be elusive. I thought he was more of a bruiser.
Uh,
Just come up the gut. Oh, we need 2 yards, right? Okay, we'll just put him in there. But he was hard to tackle because he was strong. And the word elusive, I think, is really that's not what I thought his game was.
was
Well,
not
and this
familiar with
could,
your game there, Sharp.
yeah, I mean,
No.
with this, I would say it could potentially be a little bit of a coming out party. And there was another Seahawks running back who had a little bit of a coming out party down in Arizona a couple years in the last game of the season, and that game from Sharp looked a lot like the game from Rashad Penny at the end of the season before they re-signed him for an extra year. I mean, it we're
Well,
not going
I
to have
hope he has a better
things
result than
negative
Penny.
to stay, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm not going to complain about anything that happened in this game, to my
Yeah.
knowledge. All right, let's hop over to the receiving attack. JSN paces the team again with yards, clocking in at 82 yards, 1 touchdown on 5 catches. Second in yards and the leader in catches, Zach Charbonnet, 7 catches for 59 yards. DK clocks in at 4 catches for 49 yards. George Fant, couple of key plays early on in the game to keep some drives going, 3 catches for 18 yards. And I don't usually do this, but Tyler Lockett, 0 catches, 1 target in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 3 years
think
ago
he's
he makes that catch.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I think he's on his way out. I
Agree.
love him, and I think last time I was on here is a while ago, but he's got so many business interests in Seattle. He's a very successful entrepreneur
Yes.
now, and he's not one to, you know, turn into like Earl Campbell or something, just kind of
Put
be
a ton more wear and tear on the body.
No, he's made a lot of investments in this town, and he's a smart guy. So,
Mm.
He's a
uh,
realtor. I bet you he will sell every house to every Seattle player that comes through here that's
oh,
looking for
sure.
property.
But
Yep.
he's also doing commercial property, I think, too. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think when we talked about it last night, at time is it JSN, is he the heir apparent to
Oh.
I I think so, but I think also, there was an article, I didn't have time to read it, but the title of the article is JSN the new number one?
There's a good argument for it, but here's why I'm going to say DK is still that number one target, and it's because he's so threatening. You cannot sleep on DK Metcalf, or else he's going to put 150 on you.
Right.
He's been such a monster for us for so long that this is only like, let's be honest, this is JSN only had 600 something yards last year because they didn't use him right.
Yep.
I think we can all sit there and agree. But this is kind of a breakout year. He's at, I believe, 9-11 on the year
Never
so
forget.
far. Sure.
Yeah.
So he's poised to clear 1,000 yards. He only has 6 TDs on the year too.
Yeah.
And you want to see that, but I think to kind of put him as that number one receiver option, he just has to be that devastating force. And yes, he's been that for the last couple of weeks,
Mhm.
but with DK, it's just you can't be lackadaisical with him, right? It's like they should have used him more the week prior when he was mashed up on DJ Reader.
Mhm.
And
DJ Reed.
yeah, DJ
Agreed.
Reed. And they didn't, but DK is still that guy who's going to be your clutch guy. Go
Well,
ahead.
the one
I,
thing that I want to say is I actually had a buddy of mine texting me during the game, very frustrated with the lack of targets even going DK's way, especially in the first half. He had, I believe, 2 targets in the first half. And I will say that with the offensive line play for the majority of the year, where you like to get DK involved is down the field. They have not had the ability to block well enough to give Geno clean looks to really put that oomph in the game. I'm hoping that you see this grow because you need DK Metcalf to be the number one receiver. He is getting paid as a number one receiver. And the thing my buddy saying is like, if you're not even going to target him, why wouldn't you trade him and just try to rebuild from there? It's like,
No,
no, you need this 1-2 punch. And it's unfortunate, but as Kane was saying, yeah, he has stepped up in clutch moments, and it always hasn't been with the catch. It's drawing a pass interference
he's a
because he's
good
so
blocker too.
physically imposing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and JSN is our up and coming guy for sure. And he's going to be a force to be reckoned with.
He can do
But
it in a wider variety of ways than DK can.
right. And as coach did point, the offensive line hasn't been the greatest. So, getting those little short dump off passes to JSN lets him be in his element, right? Where it's young Debo Samuel, where he's cutting through guys in the middle of the field, sideline to sideline type action. And that's where he thrives, where DK is see ball, jump ball, catch ball. It's
And run over somebody.
exactly.
I do like
So
that he's still fighting people after
Yeah.
plays, but
Oh,
not
I
getting
do. I like that.
penalized.
Well, I guess they kind of expect it.
yeah.
Maybe there's an understanding now with
And,
him.
and I do understand that Noah Fant had some key receptions, but
Key receptions.
he was so open on that dime that Geno threw him where there was nobody to the end zone. He probably wouldn't have made it because he's slow, but the option was there, and he's just not fast enough to get to the ball.
He did make a pretty phenomenal catch on that his second short out route because if Geno puts that on his numbers, he's walking into the end zone. But Geno puts it where he fingertip catches it full extension and keeps the drive going, even though it only resulted in 3.
I'm starting to like AJ Barner more and more each week, and I want him to be that number one tight end option.
Yeah, AJ Barner did clock in with a catch, but I know that we touched on the Tyler Lockett thing. Pharaoh Brown had more targets than Tyler Lockett, and Tyler Lockett had the same amount of targets as George Holani.
Yeah,
this is a guy that has been clutch, and it was the third and medium play where the Seahawks, I think, had a 3rd and 3, got called for a false start, bumped it back 5 yards. Geno's getting pressured, and JSN, they zoomed it in, legitimately catches the ball with blades of artificial grass between the ball and hitting the turf, and it was all fingertips. And he was kind of turning back towards it. That catch was bananas.
And then he turned it into positive yards.
Well, he already after that too, he put the guy in the spin cycle and went and got 8 more. So
he's so exciting. He's so excited to watch week in, week out. JSN is starting to become my favorite player on this team.
Yeah, he's pretty.
Just the energy and the presence that he kind of
false. Wait till we get to the defense.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
Kane's gene creaming coming soon. All right. Let's start it off. Usual suspects at the top when it comes to tackles, but a little mix up. Tyrese Knight clocks in as the leading tackler, 12 tackles and 2 passes defended. Ernest Jones clocks in at number 2 with 8 tackles and an interception. Reek Woolen, 8 tackles with 1 pass defended. Julian Love, 7 tackles, 1 pass defended. Spoon, 7 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. Leonard Williams staying active again, being a menace, 7 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. Kobe Bryant also clocks in with an interception, and your 2 sacks on this game are from 2 people you would never expect, and that is Jonathan Hankins and Rayshawn Jenkins to close out the game.
Are they brothers?
Jenkins and Hankins? No, they've got different names.
Maybe they're cousins.
Maybe they're brothers from
yeah, dude. This defense continued to hum. And they made Kyler uncomfortable all game. I know he threw for 256, but it was not a good 256.
No, I think after those first two picks, he was in his own head,
Well,
and
the thing that baffled me, but it also came. The Seahawks were pressuring Kyler early, very first play, brought some pressure, which the balls on Arizona's OC to call a screen pass to start the game. I thought that was a phenomenal play. But then you thought that maybe they would slow down in their run defense. And they didn't that whole first drive. They absolutely stymied James Conner at the line of scrimmage. I think his longest carry in that first drive was maybe 3 yards, and there were a few times where he was getting no yards or negative yards. Jaron Reed, Jonathan Hankins, Draymond Jones, Byron Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams, these guys came to play, and they said it again, like, you are not going to beat us with this running game. If you're going to do it, you're going to have to do it through the air. And way less of a game out of Trey McBride, way about what we saw in the first game from Marvin Harrison, but he was coming off of a 60-yard day, and I think he was right around there. Everyone was anticipating him to pop off for over 100 yards. That was the bold prediction of the week. But the Seahawks give up the bomb on the opening drive, and then Ernest Jones in the first quarter picks off Kyler Murray, and then on Kyler Murray's next pass, Kobe Bryant in a busted coverage bailout goes and picks him off as well. So, and
Yeah,
that was
Marv
predicated
Harrison
on the pressure that
was
was brought by Derek Hall.
yeah.
mhm.
And Derek Hall got some sacks, pretty much almost taken away from him because of holding calls.
Oh, he
Yeah,
was a menace.
yeah, and it didn't show up in the stats.
No, he had
I,
one tackle. And
yeah.
I tried to look up pressures, but apparently the day after a game, the only way I can look up pressures per game is if I'm a member of Chris Collinsworth's Pro Football Focus
Oh
and pay
God.
extra. And guess what? I'll roll over in my grave before I give that gentleman a dime.
And Greg Olson too. I was watching the game before the Hawks a little bit with Falcons and the Minnesota, and I just almost had to turn it off.
I can't stand Greg Olson in the booth.
He's just, if your quarterback scores 7 touchdowns and has 600 yards passing, there's a good chance you'll win. Oh yeah, those
It
kind
didn't
of.
happen for Josh Allen.
No, it didn't, but he only had 6 touchdowns, I think.
That close.
Uh, but
Three passing
man,
and three rushing. Not
Yeah,
enough.
yeah, this defense though, dude, it
it's really
apps.
gelling.
I mean, Leonard Williams is on something, and on top of the pretty good day that he had, 2 TFLs on top of that, and he planted them in the ground. Filthy.
100%.
I think also the thing that just shocks me about the defense, and this is why I'm not a football coach or an organization, but I thought getting rid of Brooks and Wagner, I thought, what the heck are these guys thinking? I mean, Wagner's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's having a great year with Washington this year,
Mm-hmm.
and Brooks was good. But yeah, with Knight coming in, everybody's like you panning him, a fourth rounder. Why'd you waste a fourth round pick on him? He probably should have gone on a little higher, I
I
would
think
think.
during the redraft that they do in the offseason, he is definitely moving up the boards for sure.
The,
Yeah, I mean,
the
he
other, yeah, go ahead.
he tops out on the board every week. It's usually him and Ernest Jones that are 1 and 2. Yeah, this kid is raw, but there's a reason he led the nation in tackles last year. He is
Well,
a nose to the ball kind of linebacker.
And he
and I
doesn't let people break very many tackles.
No,
and I saw an article today that said Ernest Jones is considered the best trade during the season all season for any team.
I and he has to be because
Would
if you
Kane, would you disagree?
no, he has to be because outside of the Bills game, right? You're coming in. Yes, you're kind of running this a similar style of defense in Tennessee, right? With the
Mhm.
Titans. And But now you're coming to the father of it all. And the way that Mike and Ernest Jones have been able to understand one of like each other after that Bills game, he has had this defense under lock and key.
Yep.
I mean, they held the Rams pretty well before overtime. 49ers they stuffed. Uh Arizona they stuffed. They
The Jets
the
outside of
Jets.
special teams, outside of the
Yeah.
first two
Oh God.
drives, locked it down.
They've
Yep.
also only allowed now is the first time they've allowed more than 14 points to an offense in like since the Rams.
But 18 points. I mean, your offense should be good enough to,
Exactly, right?
yeah, go over
Exactly.
18 points. So that they did their job for sure. Well, one thing about the offense, though, real quick, if I can go back to it, that I think is interesting is how did this our 6th round pick, uh Laumei, how did
Yep.
he jump Christian Haynes?
Christian
He's
Haynes has
regressed.
been a little bit on Mike McDonald's poo-poo list, if you will. Um, Early on in the season, this is a guy that was a 4-year starter, captain, All-American at
Hmm.
UConn. Like this guy, you expected to come in and do things right away. And the one thing that I will give Mike McDonald, and I think that's he even said it before the season. He's like, there's some guys that I don't want on this team right now. And if we weren't paying him so much, then they probably wouldn't be on this team. I think that was predicated at Jerome Baker primarily, as
Hmm.
you saw that he was the first guy that was able to get traded off this team. And I think the other thing is when you look at Mike McDonald and this entire coaching staff, you've got to earn your reps. You got to earn your play time. Trey Brown was a very good starter for this team. He has one bad game. Josh Jobe gets elevated. Josh Jobe's the starter now. Kobe Bryant in Rayshawn Jenkins' absence did good things, and now he's still playing even with Rayshawn Jenkins healthy again. You've seen this as well. Olawatimi was a guy that was the healthy scratch at the beginning of the year and now is grading out pretty darn well at center. So at that right guard position, it's been a battle week in, week out. And the one thing is Haynes isn't earning it. And it's unfortunate because of the pedigree he brings to the table. But if you're winning and you're being more effective with the 6th round guy, like you're gonna let it roll, baby.
Play the hot hand, as they would say. And yeah, this coach staff is no nonsense. You know, it's like you see with the Ravens, right? In those heydays, if you're not good enough, you're not going to make it. And if you can't run his scheme on defense, you're gone. If you're not doing anything good on offense, you're on the bench.
If you're fumbling kickoff returns,
Both of
you're
them are gone.
Yeah. So, and
ouch.
I don't think that he's necessarily no nonsense, but I do think that he is a very good communicator. And I think that he is giving these guys honest feedback in time. And I think that that's key. They even touched on it during the broadcast this week that during the bye week, they kind of gave an exit interview on here's how we think you're doing. Also, you tell us what we're doing good and what we're doing bad. And Leonard Williams, who's played on 3 different teams, has been in the league for a decade, said, that's the first time I've ever experienced that, but it helped bring us together and realize what they were seeing versus what we were doing and what we're seeing from our side, because it's never a one-way street. It's not just the coach's way or the highway, or else you wouldn't have guys coming up to coaches in game saying, why aren't we doing this? And then seeing it implemented and seeing a big smile like on a wide receiver's face where you're sitting there like, hey, I don't know what you're seeing here. I got the post all day. And they run a post and he looks right over the sideline and starts shaking his head and smiling. Yeah, that's because he helped call that. So it's that two-way street. And I think that respect is earned and respect is given when you've earned it with Mike McDonald. And I think that you're seeing a lot of that from this team embracing the youngest head coach in the NFL.
Yeah, 37.
I think it was 100% the right hire. Mike McDonald has grown on me, and I will say time and time again, I love Pete Carroll, but
Yeah,
it
me
was
too.
his time to go.
Agreed. All right. Let's go into some players of the game. Scott, who's your offensive player of the game?
I don't think Kane will guess this one.
I'm gonna guess that it's the offensive line or somebody on the offensive line.
Eh.
Pretty close though. That's a good guess. No, it is Ryan Grubb,
Oh, oh,
offensive coordinator.
Boom.
shocker!
Kane's mind is blown right
I
now.
mean, that game he called and that offensive line, which has been ranked number 28, 29 all year, they're
Yep.
like a bunch of monkeys trying to impregnate a jug. You can't.
I like how you PC'd it up. I've heard the
No,
unedited
yeah.
version of that
No, I,
before.
I use more colorful language typically, but I don't want you to get the E rating. The game that he called, because I was really starting to get suspicious of him.
We all
Um,
were. We
I
all were.
mean, the game that they won against the Cardinals before, was it 16-13 or 16-7 or something like that? It wasn't a high,
16-10 maybe.
yeah, I mean, some games are defensive battles, but you need your offense to score points and keep your defense off the field.
30
And
minutes of possession in the
that
game.
30 minutes. So
30 minutes.
they split 30 and
That's
30.
like the first time in a long time.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
But I think he coached a brilliant game. I was really concerned with the offensive line,
A lot of
but
people got open. Right. There was a lot of blown coverages.
yeah, and there was no sacks.
Yeah.
And
Huge.
they were like those old Western saloon doors.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyways, no, he coached him up well. The running game was outstanding, as Coach pointed out at the beginning of the episode. The balance between passing and rushing. I mean, I will say as a whole, the Cardinals are soft when they get punched in the mouth. There's certain teams you punch them in the mouth and they kind of fold, and they
Yeah.
folded. And that last drive, again, I don't understand what they were trying to do with that. But, the Jets, I think, are soft. Aaron Rodgers gets sulking and, there's 11 people on the field and blah, and all these excuses. It's like, dude, you're getting paid, what, 50 mil a year, whatever it is? And you're in New York and you think they're going to sit there and listen to you and talk philosophically and spiritually and go on ayahuasca trips. I've been to New York. That's Northern California, not New York. So why anybody would want to play in New York is beyond me. They're horrible fans. They're just mean.
Fair
And
enough.
and only fans that are meaner are the Eagles, which I can't stand those fans. But I just, don't play soft. And the Seahawks are not soft. They were not soft. They were going after it. And when they were kicking them on the ground, they kept kicking them. They didn't, oh, gee, can I help you up? No, the Seahawks are not soft. They hit hard. And I don't know anybody that would want to. I'm sure there's some people in the secondary talking about trying to bring Charbonnet down. I mean, that guy was not soft. And the
No.
offensive line was not soft. And it had been soft.
Well, and the other thing, just to piggyback on that, there were a lot of players giving praise to Grubb and Scott Huff. And there was a little comment that said, yeah, Scott Huff, who's the offensive line coach, made a little tweak this week. Well, one, why didn't we make that tweak sooner? And two, keep it up, young man, because that
Yeah.
was
He got
fun.
a game ball. Fun fact.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
should have. All right, Kane, what do you got for offensive player of the game?
Oh, pour me a big glass of Charbonnet. Oh boy, almost 200 or 200 yards
Grab a glass.
um altogether on the day. What didn't he do? And that 51-yard touchdown.
That was beautiful.
The seas parted for him. And then
Well, he rode the wave. He rode it back. He
he
hit the hole and then rode it back.
and then he also kicked on the afterburners. So it's something that you haven't been seeing, and he was just an electric force this week. Give me Zach Charbonnet, and if K9 continues to be out with injuries, let's see more of this. Let's get a little bit better every week. Give me some more Charbonnet.
Yeah,
Coach Red.
He shocked me.
You got anything to add about Sharbs?
He played real good.
Real good.
That's what I got.
All
He's
right,
a
Coach
gritty.
Red, who's your offensive player of the game?
When the Seahawks went down on their first drive and only kicked a field goal, and you had Arizona who moved the ball well enough and had that big pop play, I thought it could be a real big turning point because we've seen the Seahawks traditionally start very slow. And for them to score 17 points in the first quarter with not receiving the opening kickoff and Arizona having a decent amount of time on the ball, I thought this game could get out of hand pretty early. The defense helped out, but there's one guy who did not put us in trouble, did not put us in harm's way, made smart decisions through 6 incompletions on the day. And those ones are heavily contested, and the balls weren't in a place where there was any trouble getting picked off. And that's Geno Smith. What he did was not lose you the game, because there are some times, especially when it gets a little tight, especially early on, that Gino gets that little bit of gunslinger in him and takes some chances that he shouldn't have. He did not do this throughout the entirety of the game. And it's what we've been seeing the last 2 weeks, and you hope that it goes forward. Yes, I would like the passing game to be more explosive. If you can get more time, you can get DK on those longer shots. You can reintegrate Tyler Lockett into this offensive game plan, because what Tyler Lockett brings is different than what JSN brings, which is different than what you get from DK Metcalf. Giving him more time and his ability that he has shown to at times be very accurate with the ball and not make those bonehead decisions. We've seen that the last couple of weeks, and I think that Gino did what he needed to do to get this. And Scott already took the offensive coordinator, and you already took Zach Charbonnet, who, let's be
Hey,
honest, was probably the best guy on offense.
Gino did exactly what he was supposed to do this week, and he was cool, calm, and collected the entire game. When you don't get sacked, good things happen. You could see he had a little bit more of a smile on his face all game. And, he's just not been beating himself up. He's been very smart with the football lately. That's 2 games in a row now that he has not thrown a pick. So let's keep the good times going.
Well, the thing about Gino too, I've talked to Coach about this at work, but what's this quarterback class in the NFL this year is so bizarre. You know, uh, he's getting paid what, Coach? You said 32, 33 a year?
Gino's around 20, but if they
Oh,
pick up
20.
his option, I think he'll be at like 31, 32 next year.
That's a steal for a quarterback. I
Of
mean,
his caliber and what he's been able to do the last
yeah,
2 years. Was riding the
yeah.
wave a little bit too much this year, putting us on a little bit of a roller coaster
But
ride, but
again, offensive line hasn't been very good.
competent.
Sure.
Yeah. I guess Coach and I were talking a little bit today. Should we extend him? He is older, but my
Two
point
more
on that,
years.
he, yeah, he hasn't taken all the shots.
No.
There's basically 5 seasons when he was a backup and never saw the field, and he
Yeah.
was just on the sidelines with a clipboard.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at Aaron Rodgers. Maybe I shouldn't pick on the guy. I'll put some sort of new age hex on me or something. I don't know, but
He'll curse
um,
you. I think he's a witch.
okay, whatever. But I don't know. I think that
oh.
if you think about the amount of hits he's taken, the amount of hits
Ooh.
Cousins has taken,
Mhm.
the amount of hits that the Rams quarterback Stafford has taken.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, and then you've got quarterbacks that you're paying 50 million that are busts.
I
And
mean,
then you
here's
got
what you
Sam
do.
Darnold who's the toast of Minnesota. Who would
Here-
have thought?
Here's here's what you do. You extend him for 2 years, protect him, overpay on offensive linemen because you
Well,
can't win.
you can't pay him and overpay on offensive linemen, because then you say bye bye to other positions of strength. Like, you
Yeah,
have to be smart in allocating your resources, and I've been a
right.
proponent of that in my last show, Fix Your Franchise. You can't just go take young rookie quarterback,
Mm-mm.
which you need in this league realistically outside of the Chiefs, where you need a young, inexpensive quarterback and you drop him into the right situation, you can see good things happen. And that
Yeah.
usually is predicated with a line. The Seahawks have made it a point in case not to pay offensive linemen, to continue to approach it through the draft. Have they had some hits? Yes. They had some swings and misses? Yes. And then they've filled in with veteran pieces on short deals for reduced money. The reason those guys are signing those shorter, reduced deals is because the market doesn't bear the fruits for them. You need to find guys that are competent. You need to find that guy that
Yep.
maybe had a stud in front of him, played a little bit during injury time, played pretty well in those snaps, and be able to ingratiate those guys into your line so that way you can have a better focus and a better game plan going forward, because the Seahawks at times when they couldn't block for anything for the run game, that's when the Seahawks were throwing the ball at an exorbitant amount.
Mhm.
And the other times when Gino's eating sacks, it's not good for this team.
Yeah.
So
And if you extend him in either this draft or the next, take a flyer on somebody, hope you can develop them. And
I maybe Sam Howell will be ready to step up.
I don't know if Sam Howell's
I
ever
don't
going to
think he'll
be a
come back. He'll
startup.
probably want to try to go do the Drew Lock route and
Yeah.
Well,
get
that didn't
blasted
work
a
out
little.
for Drew Lock. He looked pretty
Yeah,
horrible when he got the start.
that's just a whole lot of frustration with the Giants in a whole because they started Tommy DeVito over him when Drew
I
Lock should
think
have been QB two.
that whole team's a mess. But let's move on to
Um,
defensive player of the week.
Yeah.
yeah,
We're go
yeah, yeah.
we're
We're
going
Way off the
we're in.
rails.
Scott,
all right.
who's your defensive player of the week?
It's Tyrese Knight. I just he has just been, and I said it earlier, he's just been a revelation. And again, everybody he was like when he was drafted, it was like uh a C plus rating. And like at that draft place, and it's like, well, what did they miss? And he's been a good contributor. Yeah, your inside linebackers, they don't always get noticed. It's not the flashiest position on defense, but it's vital. And they've, like Wagner was our quarterback. So, anyways, he's my guy. I'm excited about him. I'm excited about Hall. I'm excited about Kobe Bryant. Excited about Tariq Woolen. They're all Jesus.
Scott's trying to steal everybody's players of the games. He's
No, no,
excited
I'll
about
let
them
you go.
all.
I'll let you go. Mine is Knight.
Scott's bricked up by this defense.
Well, we've made some great draft picks on defense, and a lot of it, thank you, Russell Wilson, and thank you, Denver.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was just a heist, that whole thing. Yeah, and then going on offensive lines, I think of two teams in the 90s, the Cowboys and the 49ers. They did not have slouch offensive lines. How many Hall of Famers are there for those two teams?
A lot.
So, anyways, Kane, who's your defensive player?
Oh, my defensive player. It's Ernest Jones. The dude just is an animal, and he finally got his pick. First takeaway as a Hawk. Just the dude has been electric
I
ever.
thought he had a pick earlier in the season too.
I don't think with the Hawks he did.
I believe so.
He was a menace.
I thought he picked off Stafford.
I don't remember, but
He was a menace when he was with the Rams.
yeah, exactly. And you know who he kind of got some big ups from? Oh, Bobby Wagner, who we learned from playing with the Rams. It kind of looks like a young Bobby Wagner out there, just a little bit more athletic, right? What Ernest Jones does for this team, man, every week he is either number one or number two on this team in tackles. He has done everything that Mike McDonald has asked him to do. I said it before Terrell Dotson got released, or that he was going to have the mic and he was going to be calling the plays for this defense, which he's doing. Ernest Jones is the captain of that defense, and he has claimed it for himself with his play and how he kind of revitalized this defense. So Ernest Jones is my player or my defensive player of the game. Coach
I,
Red
quick
Whatever
thing.
you
He did
say.
not have an interception. I looked up.
Oh, so I was right. Thank you.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
All right. See, I come prepared now. I know my stuff. All right, Coach
Little,
Red, who is
little
your
brother
defensive player?
jealousy.
I'm gonna give it up to Reek One in this game. He's been much maligned by Kane behind closed doors and sometimes on this podcast. Played a pretty
Sure
good
has.
game. I mean, he was in phase very well throughout this game. There was a couple of catches that he gave up, but you're not going to shut guys out every week. And they're not scoring touchdowns on him. He was getting all the praise from the commentators throughout this game. He just plays a very solid game, and his speed is unmatched. His ability to recover is just so great, and you saw that on a crosser in this game that he breaks it up, where he followed the guy sideline to sideline. And that's what he can bring, being that long athletic guy. And what we saw his rookie year, yes, he does not have the picks that he had and was very close to getting one in this game. If it wasn't for a Marvin Harrison offensive pass interference, he's taking that ball and it's probably a pick six. So when you throw that in, it's a guy that I was super excited to see him continue to progress. And you're seeing guys throw a little bit more at Joe. But he had a little bit of a down game against the Jets, kind of picked it up with this play a little bit in this one. But I do want to give one honorable mention, and that's Derek Call. He had one tackle. Like I said, I can't figure out how many pressures he had, but from the get go, he was in the backfield, moving the pocket. That one of that couple of holding calls by a very good left tackle in Paris Johnson, and he was able to push the pocket on the interception to Kobe Bryant, where he floated a little bit longer when he had a wide open target. So although Derek Hall did not fill up the stat sheet, he flashed a tremendous amount in this game.
And
Yeah.
it was a game that he needed to, right? Division game to kind of separate yourself in the standings. And he showed up, and it's what we needed him to do. Him and Boya
He,
Mafe were both menaces.
that he was also jaw jacking with Kyler Murray too. I saw that,
Yeah.
he's kind of getting in his head a little bit. So yeah, he's a big kind of lanky, strange bodied guy, Hall.
The
That
Seahawks love those different players, right? What
Yeah.
he brings is different than what Boye Mafe brings, which is different than what Draymond Jones brings, which is different than what Leonard Williams brings, which is different than Cheney Nwosu brings to the table.
Also,
Welcome back.
welcome back, Uchenna.
oh yeah,
He didn't
he'll
really
get
do
up to
much,
speed.
but
He'll get
we
up to
didn't need him
speed.
to.
No.
Get his legs under him. He'll probably have a little bit better of a game next week.
Speaking of next week, Sunday night prime time, you get the late game at home where the
Yep.
Seahawks have not played overly well. You got a Packers team that's coming off of a tough loss to the Lions last Thursday, so a little bit of extra rest for them, which is seems to be a theme for the Seahawks after their bye, getting everyone with a little extra rest coming
Mhm.
off. So with this, you've got Love, who I think's played up to his contract this year. Josh Jacobs has been dynamic for them in that running game, especially with Aaron Jones deciding to move on from him with him getting a little bit older. The one thing is their wide receivers as a whole, I think, are pretty streaky. You know,
Yes.
Christian Watson will have a game where he pops off for, I think this last game, damn near 100 yards or over 100 yards, no touchdowns, but Reed doesn't get anything. Dubs sometimes pops off, and Reed's popped off, and you had
Wicks.
Tucker Craft pop off as well. And it just seems like they go in phases, which can be a little bit harder to defend if you look at it that way, because you don't know what guy's going to be hot, who's Reek trailing, who's Spoon trailing. What does that look like throughout the course of that game? And their defense is pretty solid. I mean, they played toe to toe with arguably the best team in the NFC right now at the Lions, and that was a dogfight right until the end. And their defense does have some key players in their secondary has very good guys. I think that they have guys along the offensive line or defensive line, I mean, that are slightly underrated. Like you've got Rayshon Jenkins that does a lot of good, or Rayshon, it's not Jenkins. I totally Rayshon Gary, who does a lot, doesn't necessarily fill up the stat sheet. So when you look at this team as a whole, they do have some names that you know, Jair Alexander, You've got obviously I would blank on the safety that they
They
got from
got
the Giants.
Xavier McKinney.
Yeah, like they got him without any protests from the Giants, and this team's
They got some studs. Kenny
it's a solid
Clark in the
team.
middle. I mean, Kenny Clark has been a name for years. Running attack's going to be a little bit harder on this defense. The passing game is going to be in the same boat. You just have to hope that this offensive line can hold up because the Packers are a top 10 team, arguably a top 5 team
Yeah.
right now. The one thing you have to go on is, as the same as Gino, Jordan Love has been very streaky this year. Yes, you've said he's lived up to his contract, but he also had a lot of games where he was throwing interceptions as well as throwing touchdowns. He is coming off 2 games back to back where he hasn't thrown a pick. So the Seahawks have been very pick heavy recently. Hopefully they can add another. With Josh Jacobs, as you said, he doesn't do a lot between the 20s. It's from the 20 to the end zone is where a lot of his efficiency has skyrocketed this year, right? He's been a big red zone threat. He's capping off of
He's always been a top 10 guy in the league since he
right.
stepped foot.
And he's coming off a 3 touchdown performance. So he's going to want to capitalize on that with the extra rest. And it's a whole slew of characters at receiver, and you just never know what's going to happen. It's going to be a tough matchup for sure.
Oh yeah.
It,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough matchup. I think it's going to be an exciting matchup. I think you think of the elite teams, you got the Chiefs, you got the Lions, and those are like,
Eagles.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then right under them, I think Green Bay is, and the Seahawks are getting into that second tier. I and it'll be a very interesting game to see how the Seahawks. Okay, we beat one average team and one below average team in the last 3 weeks. So
Sure.
here we're going up against the top 5. I don't think the records are going to matter as much because I think the streaks that the Seahawks are playing right now, I mean, you can't compare them to their losing streak and what they're doing. So it's going to be an interesting game. I really can't have a prediction. It could very easily go to overtime. Um, I don't think either team's going to blow out the other team.
That's a fairly good assessment.
It'll be interesting to
It's a
see
better assessment than Chris Collingsworth can give.
that he will give throughout the game.
How
Like I
many
said,
Kansas City references are we getting?
it'll be interesting to see because Mike McDonald in primetime games so far in his head coaching career is 0-2. Yes, it was a highly contested value with the Lions, and
Yeah.
that first 49ers game was not good, and that was kind of the start of the stretch of the Seahawks not playing good, but they seemed to course corrected a little bit over the last since the bye week, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of fervor they come out with in this game because I do think that this is going to be a back and forth battle. I think that if you're looking as just a casual fan across the NFL, this should be a very fun watch come Sunday night.
I agree
Yeah.
with that. It's hard, it's impossible to predict though.
I mean, right now with the Seahawks, the personalities are out. You're seeing the swag that's just dripping off of Spoon, off of
Oh
Big
yeah, we
Cat,
forgot about him.
off of, this whole defense. Just they're hungry, right? I think they're ahead of schedule as to what really the fans and everybody thought where this defense was going to be at this point in the season. Um, he's turned this defense from what lower echelon of the league to about middle of the road.
Well, they've been the top defense since week 9. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I think they're better than middle of the road, but I don't think they're elite yet.
not yet, not yet. But I think a couple more pieces and they'll have figured out. But it's going to be interesting to see how Mike combats LaFleur's offense.
which he's usually fared pretty well against
It's the
the
McVay
Shanahan
guys,
tree.
Shanahan tree, yeah. So they just the one thing that Green Bay has is out of these players. Last time we saw last time we saw the 49ers, CMC came off of his Achilles injury. Debo is banged up. George Kittle's kind of banged up. Nick Bosa got banged up, right? All of that. But this Packers team just has a lot of athletes and a lot of different ways to score. It's just going to be interesting to see how Mike can kind of put a damper on their mood.
Don't put a damper on our mood. You know how you could cheer us up? Give us a follow over on social media. You can find me, your boy, Coach Red, on X at the real Coach Red, on Instagram at the real underscore Coach Red, TikTok at the real Coach Red. You can also find the show over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, and leave a comment or two. Scott, we know that you're not on social media, so we'll just
No.
flip it right over to Kane.
Yeah. I'm in
Yeah.
my mid-50s.
I'm Kane. You can find me over on Twitter, Kane2406, TikTok, Kane0624. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. Follow us. Do it, freaking do it.
Big thank you to Scott for coming on
Thanks for
this
inviting me,
episode.
guys.
And a big thank you to everyone that has tuned in for any period of time over the course of the first 200 episodes. We appreciate the support and we'll continue to be putting stuff out for you because it's fun and we like to do it. And here's to another 200.
All
But
righty.
as always, stay fresh.
Stay fresh, peeps.
Peace.